Hey guys, I'm Mustached here, aka Mustached. I'm here to review the movie Hunt, or The Hunt. And if you end up enjoying this review, then consider joining my Patreon page. Any donations are desperately needed. Alrighty then. So, I had no clue about what this movie was, that's for sure. The only reason I even know that this movie was a thing is I saw thumbnails of other people reviewing the movie. And then that's when I went to go off to see it. Interesting poster. I want to actually read this. The most talked about movie of the year is one that no one's actually seen. Interesting. Decide for yourself. And then it has a cross out movie. I'm assuming that this movie was delayed. And they actually mocked the movie being delayed. So this movie, boy oh boy, talk about a blood sport. So this movie gets political a little bit. It gets a little bit. There's a lot of blood stuff going on. So definitely check it out if that sounds interesting. But I want to recap what happens in the movie as well. So the movie starts with this text having about quote unquote the hunt. The hunt comes up after this little joke about turtle fucking a shoe. And we cut to the people on the airplane who are getting ready for this hunt. And one of the people that they're hunting wakes up too early. So this doctor guy quickly stabs this junk man. And this woman uses her boot to stab him in the eye. And we actually see the eye coming out. And his body is tossed next to this blonde woman who is passed out. And that is the setup of what type of movie we're gonna get into. So speaking of the blonde woman, the movie starts with her on the floor, gagging her mouth, and she sees this other woman in the distance who seems to kind of ignore her and be on her own little way. So the one in blue who we are currently following is trying to call her out, and then she sees some other guy moving about. But the other woman already left. So she follows the man along that she saw earlier, and the two of them come across this open field, and in the middle of the field is this big ass crate, and more people with gags in their mouths are coming out. The movie suggests later that there were exactly 12 people that are out there, and I think the movie show all of them. I don't remember. Anyway, one of the people is already at the center, or very close to the center, so he's already at the box, and he sees this crowbar, so he decides to open the box. And everyone else is like watching on, very wary of like, oh, what is happening? They don't want to get in too close. So he starts to open it, and this pig comes out, and everyone's like, huh? What? What's this all about? But he also pulls out these slab of weapons, and everyone's like, ooh, we gotta get to notice all that. As the woman in blue is moving forward, she comes across this little platform with this little, I guess, little envelope, and it has the keys, so she's able to help unlock one of them, and then she's helped out as well, and then all the other people are like, we'll just take these weapons. And she's like the only person currently being like, I don't know, I kind of want to figure out what's going on here. So yeah, they're holding on to their guns. Um, and as they're kind of precariously looking, this American dude is like, "Here, this is how you use your gun," and they're talking about, what's going on. Oh, what was it? And then from out of nowhere, the blue girl is shot dead. So there we go. So I thought this movie was gonna follow her, but no, that's immediately shot down, literally, with her getting shot dead. And then we start to follow the guy we were just with. Um, and he's watching as these other people are starting to get gunned down. So this action guy, who I assume is our new lead character, comes across this woman who fell into this hole with these pikes in it. He pulls her out of the pike, and she has this weird comment about her birthday being tomorrow. But he steps onto a mine, and then they both blow up. So no, he's also not the main character. We then follow another man in blue, who's running for it, and three other people join him. This woman with red hair, this rapper-looking guy, and this other person. And one of them mentions Manor Gate, and this is brought up throughout the movie. Now, for those who don't understand what that means, we to get into the whole political part of this, you had movements of like Gamergate or, something gate. This thing isn't allowed, or like people complaining about like, oh, this game has blank, therefore bad, that sort of attitude. And, game must be, just to use Gamergate as an example as someone who plays games. Like, oh, this person has big boobs, sexism, bad, cancel game, that sort of attitude. So they mention Manor Gate as this movie, or one of them does. So the people there most of them, or one of them, or maybe even more than one of them, seems to kind of know what's going on a little bit. But the man who mentions the gate, or yeah, it was him. He gets, because there's this fence, so they're trying to climb over. Three of them climb over successfully, and as he's trying to climb over, he is shot with an arrow. So he tries to charge forward, and he gets shot down with two more arrows. So we're not following that guy anymore, but we're still following the blue man, the man in blue. Sorry, the redhead and the rapper dude. And they, based off of the information that they're trying to retrieve, they think they are in Arkansas. The three of them, by the way, are from three totally different locations. So, one of them tries to call the cops and gets, like, this guy who's like, oh, well, calm down, then he's trying to explain the situation. So the redhead woman, starts eating the food there, and she, like, gurgles on the food and then passes out. The food kills her. The rapper guy is knocked back as the blue guy notices that the two people running the store have gas masks on and then have guns as well. And he is shot dead suddenly. And as these two old people talk about after they clean up the three dead bodies, they're talking about how, again, getting to the political stuff, they're talking about, the best, just say it, black people, they just say that, that versus the other appropriated name that they mention is like African American, and then the guy's like, oh, we can call them black again or whatever. So they're, they have these little political talks throughout the movie. Uh, so anyways, this woman in red comes in, one of the survivors, the one that ran off earlier, the one the blue one saw. So she's now in the store, acting very casually. But she proceeds to be the one to attack first, and guns the two old people down. So she takes off her jacket, ties her hair up, and she becomes action hero lady. So she is our main character, for all intents and purposes. As she goes to the vehicle outside, she notices that it has a string trap on it. So she has the radio that they had, as these other people, the hunters, are talking about the situation, and they send a drone in to try to look around. So this bigger man comes in, this fatter guy comes in, shoots the drone down, and almost enters the car, but she's kind enough to stop him from doing that. So he decides to follow her. I'll call her Red for simplicity's sake. I don't actually know her name. I think they say at the end of the movie, but I don't know her name for sure. Anyway, so he's talking about how he's making this theory about how these people that are hunting them down are specifically the rich elite. They're the ones hunting them down specifically, and he introduces himself as Gary. So the two of them they're walking on the train tracks, and they hear a train coming, so they get on the train. So she jumps on, and she manages to pull him in, and they hear a noise, and they see a group of individuals, none of which are speaking English, and Greg is not believing in any of this, by the way. He's like, oh, you're all fake. You're all trained or whatever to do this. So the train stops, and the military comes out to, get everyone off. And Greg mentions Manorgate, with her still listening in. As the military people leave, the guy that he was mainly accusing of being fake was actually one of the actors, one of the hunters included. So Greg attacks the actor with a grenade, right down the pants, and he blows up when Greg makes some distance. So, Red and Greg enter the camp. They seem to get separated after that. So she ends up going to this little camp area, and she joins in on this Dino character and this other police officer, and she's talking to them about being hunted. And she introduced to this new old man, and he talks about Manorgate as well. So, a businessman comes along to pick them both up in a vehicle. As they are driving along, Red decides to kick him out of the door, and he's like, and this new old man's going like, oh, why'd you do that? She opens the trunk to see the real version of that guy, and the one that was driving them was another one of the hunters. And he's still trying to get that info of like what this whole Manorgate, why are they doing this? So she finds a map after dealing with the hunter guy in the car. She starts to open up to this old guy about the story about the jackrabbit and the turtle. Uh, it's a story we've all heard before. How the jackrabbit always wins and gets cocky, races the turtle, doesn't think the turtle will ever win, takes his time. The turtle wins when he races the jackrabbit. But she includes this part of the story that is new to the story, where the jackrabbit comes to the turtle's house and kills the turtle's entire family before the turtle's eyes. It includes killing the turtle because the jackrabbit always wins. That's how she puts the story. And as they are as she finishes up the story, the pig that we saw from the crate comes like waddling out into the streets. So we cut to the hunters, and they're talking about AIDS because they're just bored and they're waiting and they're talking about whatever. So they're talking about AIDS. And one of the sergeant guys who claims to have been in the movie, what was it? He claims to be in, don't remember, song. It had Bruce Willis in it. That's all I remember. Damn it, I didn't write it down. Claimed to be in a movie with Bruce Willis. Anyway, so we cut to, again, they had been talking about the hunter, talking about AIDS, and this one guy leaves the little base to take a piss. So both Red and Old Beardo, that's what I'll call him, Mr. Beard, attack him, and Red slits the throat of this guy. So we see the pig slide down into the hunter's territory, and Red proceeding to gun them down, all the hunters in that room. And, she takes all of them down. The last one remaining is this one woman, and she's like, she already had an arrow in her, and she's like pointing the gun at her. And then she looks to Greg. She's like, well, you wanted to know why this was happening. Now's your chance. And then she's like, oh, God, that's why we're doing this. And he's like, oh, no, don't shoot her. She's a woman. And then our lead, Red, is like, she directly asks her, do you think it's unfair for me to shoot you as a woman? And she's like, no. And then then Red just shoots her. He's like, oh my God. So very fun action-oriented stuff as she was killing all the others. How she like grabbed a machine gun, was trying to keep slotting in one of the machine gun bullets, but there was already still one in there. Shoots him down. Tackles the army man down. Combat fights her way through with a crowbar. So Beardo, Mr. Beard, joins her after the fact. Again, with the woman being the last one. And then she gets killed. So the base leader calls in and says that Mr. Beard was one of the ones with him. So now they're both aiming guns at each other. So she guns down Greg. So yeah, there's that. So she's trying to get intel as to where this woman is. And this is poking at the military guy. They had both been to war, which explains her training, or her aptitude for training. Guns him down. And we cut to 1 year ago with these three individuals, Paul, Nicole, and Athena. And Paul and Nicole are getting on Athena's grill about the text we saw at the beginning of the movie. And Paul says, this is not a country, it's a business. That's a very interesting way to put that. speaking of politics. So they bring up the text to Athena, and Athena keeps saying, "Listen, this text was a joke. It was, we were just, yeah, it's just, haha, fun." But they kept saying, "No, no, no. You, you were talking about this hunt. You were talking about killing these what you called deplorables. This is very serious. We have to let you go." And she's like, "This was a joke." So very politically fake news versus, um, the actual, whether or not something was a joke or not. Um, so we cut to a few months after, but it's still a few months ago from the current timeline. We see the hunters, including herself, Athena, looking for their 12 targets. And again, when they go over their potential targets, uh, they go over this black guy, and they're like, "Oh, we should have that one black guy." Clearly making fun of the whole horror trope of like, "Oh, the black guy always dies first," or like, you know, but it's for more political reasons of like, "Oh, we need to make sure it's even, distributed evenly." But they're still like, "No, no, 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 we gotta go, we gotta avoid that." So they see our main lead, Red, and then Athena's like, "That one. That's our snowball," as she puts it. So Red makes her way to the manor, and Athena says to put her gun away, so she does so. So she's invited into the house. And as she's walking through, she sees the 12 picks, the 12 people that were picked out. And she's talking to Athena, who says, like, "Oh, I'm not crazy," but that because Red calls her crazy, but she's like, "No, no, I am crazy, but that makes me not crazy," or something like that. And she starts to talk about Red's past, about how her situation of someone who lost some people, and then was one of the people that attempted to expose Athena's, you know, the text as that they were sending each other as like, this is a serious thing. Again, the very political versus of like fake news versus a joke. Which one is it? I don't know. But Red claims to be not that individual. She claims to be someone else. She says, "You captured the wrong one. I have a sister," or something. I think she says that, and then she's like, "My parents are fine." She's saying a very different thing. So it's like they're both wrong and they're both right in different aspects. And then Red's like, "Okay, we've been talking for a while. Are we gonna fight now?" And then they just start fighting. And I must say, this fight is an intense one as Red and Athena go at it throughout various rooms. Athena eventually takes out a gun, and then they like tackle each other and they're like stabbing each other. So when they're both a little worn down from the intense fighting, Red asks why she was referred to as a snowball. She said Athena replies that it was a reference, and that she explains what that means. And she says, "You should be Snowball." Uh, so Red gets the big stab on Athena, which causes her to die. And as she's wounded and looking, she sees a rabbit. Because of the story, I guess. So she cleans up. She puts on a fancy dress, one of Athena's dresses, and then grabs some shades along the way. Takes the dog with her. Gets on the private jet. And she talks to the other two that are in there. She's like, "Oh, let's go." She has herself a nice little drink, and the movie ends. And that was The Hunt. Whew! talk about an explosive movie. Uh, Fantastic, fun action, nice and bloody, interesting opening. It's the one issue I have is that the character whom we are following, I never got her name, and I could have just missed it. That's very possible. Um, but nonetheless, this is a movie which we have this heavy action, hunters versus the hunted, and we also have this the backdrop of, but it's very politically motivated on each front, on this versus that, on which side is actually correct, or whatever. So this is a definitely an interesting movie, and I would definitely say out of the different arguments that happen throughout the movie, the last one is actually the most interesting. I'm not saying that the other ones aren't interesting. I'm just saying out of the ones that are talked about, the one that's last happens to just be the most interesting to me because they are about the main, our main character that we have been following throughout the movie, or most of the movie anyway, and our antagonist of the movie. And there are two different political differences. Um, and we have these other little political jabs along the way. Uh, so there is that. Apparently, the movie being delayed had much to do with the movie being so politically driven, question mark. I hadn't personally heard any news of that sort. Again, the only reason I even heard about this movie was from other people's thumbnails, so I didn't see any controversy beforehand, but considering what this movie has in it, I would probably understand why it would have said controversy, which is always like, it's always stupid. Every single time. The whole thing with Joker, just the obvious previous example I can think of like a movie, it's like, people going crazy about like, oh, it's gonna be this movie, it's gonna get so political, etc., etc., and the movie ends up being fine. It's like, every single time. Every single time. Every time a movie looks like it's gonna be big, there's always this like political thing now attached to it. Of like, oh, it shouldn't have this, or, it's gonna have this, so it's gonna be bad, or whatever. So I like how this movie just says, you know what, we're just actually going to straight up address these things, straight up have a versus political match. And I actually really enjoy that the final confrontation is fake news versus comedy. Uh, you know, it was a joke versus this wasn't even real. This is all, or this was real, or, whichever tree branch you want to lean off of. And the end of the movie even has you start to question because Athena was like, "You're one of them, aren't you? One of the hunters." She goes down the list of like, "You're that one," which actually starts to make you think like, "Huh, was the character we were following really one of the hunters?" I mean, she seemed to have no issue taking down everyone else, but then again, they were taking down other people, so it's like killing for, protection's sake. Um, so yeah, it's definitely interesting final aspect of the movie. Uh, and I've put my foot forward on it of like how I felt about fake news before and how I feel about fake news now. I think that transition has been really interesting. as someone who, when I first heard of fake news, I was like, oh, that's very clearly a bad. Um, and after giving it some thought, I was like, these people are trying their best to make money, and money equals being able to survive in this day and age. So I understand the desperation. As someone who's always desperately pleading for people to join my Patreon page, I fully understand why certain people would, stoop to what others would consider a very bad level. I get it. Because just to get whole political with YouTube for a moment, there were certain YouTubers that were saying, "Oh, the news people, they're the bad guys," and I'm over here thinking like, yeah, but sometimes YouTubers do that too. Sometimes YouTubers create fake news stories too. Drama alert. I'm always willing to call out names when they are applicable. And again, I get it. People, and people say cancel drama alert. They do the whole, it's fake news, so cancel it. For YouTube too. So I totally understand it, but again, I also understand, um, you know, a certain individual saying, times are tough, so let's create some fake news for money. I get it. You're desperate. I get it. I've never, despite how, I've always pleaded for people to join my Patreon page, but yet I have always maintained, uh, telling the truth about things, at least to the best of my ability. So yeah, very enjoyable movie. Get you thinking. That's the type of movie I enjoy. Nice amounts of blood and gore, or just blood. I would give this movie an 8 out of 10. I think it's really solid. And definitely check it out if you haven't already. I'm pretty sure this is rated R, so with all that being said, that is my review of The Hunt. And if you enjoyed it, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, make sure to check out those links in the description. One will head you over to my Discord server. The second to my Patreon page. Any donations will all be desperately needed. And until next, everyone, bye-bye.